Well, hey there, it's Elke, and welcome to another episode of the Creative and Ambitious Entrepreneur Podcast. Yes, I'm flying solo again today. Jen is not here. She's dealing with a bit of a shoulder and neck injury. What can you do? But she's getting better, just so that everyone knows, because everyone's reached out and asked how she's doing. So thank you so much for concerns and well wishes. Really appreciate that. So what is our topic for today? Pinterest do's and don'ts for Zazzle designers. Yep, that's true. There's a whole bunch of things that have been happening on the Pinterest platform, which has really taken us like for aback. So let's just say, and it's like, what? Those rules don't apply anymore? It's like, oh my gosh, I got to change my entire Pinterest strategy for posting from Zazzle onto the Pinterest platform. So I'm here to help. I was going to say we are, but I'm doing the solo. So the most important thing is that since about January of 2021, Pinterest has put into place certain other changes that weren't there before, and those impact on how we as Zazzle designers need to pin to the platform for most effective results, right? And our results are twofold. We want to drive traffic to our Zazzle store to get sales, and we also want, if possible, to get the referral income for making that affiliate link move from Pinterest to the Zazzle marketplace. And of course, make them buy our stuff or make them buy somebody else's stuff. But depending on your affiliate link, which is a whole other episode, we're not getting into that now, but you can then make some affiliate income based on your the type of links that you create. But the most important thing is that Pinterest is one of the main sources that we recommend in the Profit by Design Academy, and that we have used personally to make over $1.5 million worth of money on Zazzle. That has been our main source externally promoting onto the Pinterest platform. So we're always watching out and making sure that we not only look and take into account all the changes, but then we test them out. That's why we're doing this podcast here in May. And even though the changes happened earlier, we wanted to test out everything and then give you the best advice. And so that's what we're going to do today. And today's going to be very special because it's basically going to be a to-do list and a to-don't list. So you're going to get some don'ts, but you're also going to get a lot of do's. And together, those are going to help you make sure that you feel comfortable being as effective as possible on the Pinterest platform when you're promoting your Zazzle products. And I'm just going to dive in because there's quite a few of them, and we want to keep this short. All right, so the first we're going to start with the do's. I'm always up for more positive than negative. So the best thing to do is to do the positive, right? And then if you do some of the negatives, then, well, it's not a problem, but it's not a big deal. But the main thing is to do these do's. All right. So do number one. I'm not even going to say that for the rest of this. It just sounded really weird the way I just said it. So, do pin your Zazzle products using the red pin button on Zazzle immediately after posting. So the key here is that we used to tell you to pin a certain number of products and then wait and schedule them out and all that. And now what we're saying, because of the way that the changes have happened on Pinterest, you can now just, as soon as you post your product for sale, do what's necessary to just do that one extra step. We're calling it the Jen and Elke's post and pin strategy, just so that you have something to remember it by. It's like, oh, Elke said pin as soon as you post, right? So post and then pin strategy. The idea here is that you don't forget. And at least you've been able to post it once onto Pinterest. And obviously you're going to pick a specific board that suits the item that you're pinning and so on. You're going to be very intentional with your pin. You're not just going to pin willy-nilly, but you are going to make sure that you pin the majority of your products that you make. And this is going to help you because it'll be that first, what's considered a saved pin. because when you use that little red button on the Zazzle platform that's right next to the product when it's on the product page, that then goes directly to, like if you're linked up, then it goes to Pinterest, and then all the information from the Zazzle platform that is necessary goes over into the Pinterest pin. And we don't have to do any work. We just have to say what board and say yes, and then it's done. And so that's really easy. It doesn't add a lot into your scheduling of or your routine of creating a product, and you've right away promoted it, which is really important because that's the first thing, is to have it on another platform initially, other than the Zazzle platform. And that way there's two search engines that are working towards getting you sales, right? Because Pinterest is a search engine, Zazzle's a search engine, and then if you've you've done your titles and tags properly, Pinterest will be very helpful when you pin your pin, because it'll take the title, and also the Google platform, which is another search platform, obviously, that Zazzle indexes everything into. Then you are going to have Google, Pinterest, and the Zazzle Marketplace as three different places where customers can find your lovely products that you made on Zazzle. And so that's the objective, right? So do pin your Zazzle products using the little red button right on the product page as soon as you posted it for sale, and you'll just be golden. And that's why this is number one, and it's the most important. So if you at least do that, then you're already way ahead of the game. All right, so let's go into some more of the details of some of these other parts of the transaction, other than that original pin, like just that initial pinning. Okay, so there is a second type of pin that you can make, which is called a manual pin, and you have to then, as it says, you have to manually upload the picture, the text, and everything, and then physically pin it on the on the Pinterest platform, even if it's a Zazzle product. And so that's the second do pin your top sellers as manual pins at least once. So this is a little bit of strategy that we usually keep in our Profit by Design Academy bootcamp and our training on the self-study course. But what's really important here is we're going to give this to you now because of the way that things have changed now. It's very important that you create some manual pins. And then the suggestion, so that it's not that much work, is for you to, from us, our suggestion to you is that you create your manual pins from the top sellers. And so if you want to learn more about how to create those manual pins and what's the strategy behind them and when to pin them compared to when you pinned your initial red button pin that you did with the post and pin strategy, then let us know. We can help you in the Profit by Design Academy and also in all of our other training courses. But that's what you're going to do. You're going to pin the top sellers as well, but they are going to be manual pins, and you'll pin those, like, even though you'd pinned it once just using the Zazzle platform, in this case you're also going to pin them manually by creating a pin right on the Pinterest platform. All right, then the next do is do mix in other types of pins. So what we're doing here is we're saying you can pin the URL from the product, but what about pinning from like some sort of image, or these are all manual pins, by the way. So whether you're creating a manual image and you're posting it up, you're uploading it onto Pinterest, and then what you have the option to do is create a URL or add a URL. So this URL can be in your, it could be your product, it could be your store link, it could be a category link or a collection link. It can also be a search link, actually. But as long as you are then, it's the right link that matches up with that image that you're uploading, then you're creating a really lucrative and useful pin for people. And so the idea here with this do is to remember that those are all the options for the different URLs that you can use, and that gives you the opportunity as well to create a lot of variety in terms of what you link to and also what the image could be. And so we want you to know that that's an opportunity. It's not just the product itself. It's ways that you can do that in terms of, let's say you go like 5 ways to have a really great golf session. or 5 ways to make sure that no one else uses your golf stuff. And then you have a whole bunch of labeled, personalized items from Zazzle that all fit together, and they're all on a little image. And so that's the kind of thing you want. And then you could draw the URL that you are actually linking to could be to the collection where all those products are housed in there. So that'd be a really fun pin, and it would get a lot of traction because it's different and it's helpful and it's useful. All right. And then as of May 2021, I'm just going to say that from this point on, you also don't have to pin other people's items to your boards, right? Initially, the idea was it had to be a well-rounded board. There had to be a lot of interest, and it couldn't just be you posting your Zazzle products. Instead of getting other people's pins now and adding them to the mix, we're going to do that. We recommend that you do more of what I just said to you, where you're taking your own, you're always driving traffic to Zazzle, your Zazzle store, or maybe your blog if you have an external website or blog. But that's the only 2 places that you're going to drive traffic to from Pinterest. And instead what you're going to do is vary up the pins based on what the pin looks like, instead of adding in, other things that you may be used to that were like help guides or a pretty picture of a cake or flowers, or someone playing golf as like just a Canva, like a stock image or something like that. Instead, now you can always use your own links and drive traffic basically just to the things that you own, like your website and your Zazzle store. And so that's really important. And I've got something in my eye. Okay, so the next do is you can have multiple accounts, and there's no limit on the number of boards, but there is a limit on the number of times that you can pin the same URL. So this do pin each Zazzle URL, but only once every 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, and then when you pin the second time around, you have to vary it up. And so the Pinterest algorithm will now recognize when you pin the same image with the same URL. So you have to vary it up. But one of the ways that you can do that is you can actually pin like the same product, but use a different product view. And because that's a different picture, then that qualifies as a new pin. Okay, so but you don't want to do that more than once every 2 to 3 weeks. And I wouldn't advise doing that for all of your products. That's just too much work. Okay, the next do is to pin when you can. Now there was a time where it was, and there is still some merit to pinning, maybe at least in the North American time zone, for example, but more than likely people are now not using Pinterest as much for the feed aspect as they are for the search aspect. And that is actually where Pinterest is going. That's why they've implemented, I believe, this extra piece where they say, okay, no more than 1 pin per URL, because they want it to be more of a search engine, and it has to be a nice tight search engine, right? So if there's the same image pinned multiple times, then that's the same URL over and over again. And as Zazzle also always asks you to do, is to make sure that your title is unique and your tags are unique with the design that might be on 10 or 100 different products, and it's all the same design. You probably have some trouble labeling it, because that's what Zazzle wants us to do, is create these unique URLs. And this is what Pinterest is asking as well, so that the search algorithm is much better and the rankings are better on Google and all that stuff. So we're all trying to, as a community, help these sites become even better in terms of their SEO. However, what that means then for you in terms of pinning is that it's really important that you don't now spam in terms of pinning the same thing over and over again. Whereas before, it was like willy-nilly. You could pin the same product, same view, as many times as you want, pretty much, maybe up to 8 boards or something, they said. And so that's the big new thing that you're going to do now, is just pin once, and then if you want to, you can pin again in 2 to 3 weeks, but you have to be very specifically remember what pin you did before, so that you can use a different image from the Zazzle platform, like one of the other product views, and then you can pin it again. And that, it's not that you can not pin anything, like it's not like going to go like, you're not allowed to pin this, but what's going to happen is that pin, if you pin the same URL in the same image over again, what you're going to see is that that pin will never have as much ability to get the traction as the first time round. And so with every time you pin the same URL and same image, it's going to have less and less weight. And so why pin if you're not going to have the weight? You might as well just let that other pin do its job, right? Okay, so that's the end of that one in terms of when you can and also the what you should do. But and again, the search engine allows us to then pin whenever. So that's why when you're posting, you can right away pin, and it doesn't matter if you're making this product at 2 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time, or you're making it at 9 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so don't worry about exactly when you're pinning, unless you have a very specific market that only looks at your stuff right between a certain number of hours. And then of course, if you can, and you can schedule it out, or if you can physically do it at that time, then you can go for it. But it's like another level up. You don't have to do that initially as a do or die, right? You can also just pin them, and then it'll work through the search engine. It doesn't have to be in the actual new pin feed and has to have someone see it. Because also remember, there's so many pins that are getting pinned every single moment of the day. And so therefore, your pin might be on the new feed for 2 seconds. And then if people get notifications, that's a little bit different. But most people just watch the feed or they go search. And I think that's the way to now understand how to use the Pinterest platform as a way to market. All right. And then I already mentioned that you should do some manual pins. And so that's my last to do, is to say, please create those manual pins and make sure there's a nice balance, at least with the top sellers that you have in your Zazzle store. But then every so often also make sure that you've got some manual pins that are interjecting there to try and get some new products to also get more traction on the Zazzle marketplace. But this, because we always have this in mind with our perceivable, passive, profitable business framework that we have developed, where we want to make sure that it's passive and profitable. And so therefore and perceivable as in like, can I really do all this work? And because manual pins take a lot of work, a lot of thought, and they take a lot of time, is the return worth it? So if you want to, do it, but otherwise the first time, post and pin. That strategy you can definitely do. And then over time, create some manual pins for your top sellers. And then if you want to go one more step further, you do get some more leverage when you do manual pins. Also, the reason is that your manual pin should be something interesting and different, including things like reels, videos. I think you can even do carousels now, but I'm not sure. And I think they're going to get into stories soon. So all to come, but that's the kind of manual pin you should do, not just like a static image, unless it's a image that's something like a 5 easy steps or 5 suggestions for that kind of thing, where you're actually giving value and it's a much more interesting image than just a picture of a product. Okay, so that's all the do's, and now we're going to go into the don'ts. All right, so the first don't is don't waste time creating board covers. Some people have done that and have made their boards look really pretty. But if you have a really great title and title and description, then it's not a problem. You can just have your images showing on the boards and as you pin them, and it'll be fine, because the most important thing is that people come to a board for a reason. They're not looking at your account specifically and going like, what should I pick from this entire account? Instead, they're going to be like, they're interested in, the latest things for kids working at home, like homeschooling or something. I'm just making something up. But that's how they're going to get attracted to your account, and they're going to just specifically look at your board, not your entire account, because you might have other offerings like weddings or business and so on. And I know that you're trying to cover an entire area of niches that you cover in your Zazzle store, but the people on Pinterest are going to just come there for that one specific piece that they want, not just like, oh, I want to look at this designer's Pinterest account. That's not how it works, although that's how we as Zazzle designers look at it, and so therefore we think it needs to be all pretty. Whereas for them, it's just we just need to get them to where they want to go and how we can help them. But if you do find that there is a little bit of something there that you've got so much going on in your Pinterest boards that it could be at least an advantage to have a couple of the top sellers that you have in Zazzle have a cover image, so that if people are browsing, like let's say that you're a specialist in weddings, and then you have people who are coming because they're doing something that they want a wedding something, then maybe they have yet to know whether they should be in the pink and blue wedding board or the navy nautical wedding board. And if that's the case, then that might be one of those instances where you have to put some more attention into creating board covers. But right now, that's not necessary. Okay, so, and the second the second don't is repin your own pins into other boards directly from Pinterest. Okay, so that's really interesting, right? Because that's new. So now repins are not as interesting. So you don't need to take it from one board and put it into another. Rather, take a new pin from somewhere external, even if it's similar or it's the same product that you're actually going to direct them to as a customer. You are going to use a different pin, maybe with a different image if you're doing another saved pin. But if you're doing a manual pin, then you can even put like the image is going to be different anyway, and then you can use the same URL as well. So either of those, then you don't put those in the same board, you put them in a different board, okay? But you're not repinning from other boards, and you're also not repinning your other people's pins to your board. Okay, the next don't is don't change the descriptions of other people's pins. So even though we're not starting, like we're basically saying don't bother with other people's pins, but if you are doing that and you're pinning someone else's pin onto your boards, it's a definite no-no. That's one of the reasons why, it's a definite no-no to edit that, because that's one of the reasons now that it's so difficult to edit pins. And I think the message here is more so if you're now creating like even a manual pin, you don't want to rejig the information from someone else that has set this up properly on their website with the price or with the information, and all of a sudden you switch out the text. That's taking someone else's property and modifying it, which you have no permission for. And I think that's one of the reasons that this is coming into place. And I think at some point, if it's not already done, it's going to be that you can't do it anyway. Okay, and then the next don't is don't delete pins. It's a waste of time. The idea here is that you've already put them up and they're just there in the ether space, and there's no advantage at all for deleting those. I'm looking at my notes here just so I don't forget any of the don'ts. Okay, don't add hashtags anymore. Okay, there was a time when hashtags were definitely something that would help your products or your pin, and you would probably be mostly pinning your products. They would be showing up in the feeds more easily if there was a hashtag. Now that's completely gone, so don't add hashtags anymore and don't worry about them. If you have products or pins, that have hashtags that you did in the past, don't worry about them. Doesn't matter. Don't go back and edit anything. You can't even sometimes do that, but don't worry about that. Just don't add any more hashtags. All right, the next don't is don't change, don't change descriptions on old pins of your own. This goes in line with the ones of others, but Pinterest will not see the edits, which makes it's kind of weird. Rather, if you've edited your Zazzle product, repin it as a new pin. Even though it's the same product and the same URL, it'll have a different title because you've edited the title, and so therefore it will look as like a new pin. And so that's the way to do that, rather than changing the description or the any sort of edits on an old pin, because it won't get picked up anyway. All right, and then no, there's actually more. Okay, the next don't is don't use cutesy names, spaces, icons in board titles. All right. So some people are like using emojis and whatever else, and really like fun names like the name of their paintings or whatever, like Serenity. What you want to do with your titles for your boards is to actually make them searchable and unique and specific for the use of that board. So if we are dealing with a black and white 50th birthday party invitation and accessories, then that's what you have to write in there. If you have like all 50th and fabulous birthdays suggestions, then that's what the title should be. If you have everything for women over 50 that need a birthday invitation / party ideas, then that would be your title, right? We want to make them very, very specific so that we make sure, and if you just say birthdays, then that's useless, right? That's as bad as putting all these like cutesy names in and stuff. But the key here is those icons and the emojis, they don't get searched, and so it's just a waste of character spaces. All right. Definitely don't use group boards. There is a merit to using group boards when you're part of like Tailwind, and there's some other, like that's a scheduler if you're not sure about that. But then there's that in itself for traction might be something you want to do. But what we recommend in the Profit by Design Academy is that you have to feel worthy that your actual brand and your creativity is worth it, that you can be a standalone brand. And if you're in a group board, that means you're being like you feel like you need to have others help you, whereas your brand and your products and your designs should actually be able to stand on their own in terms of people finding them. And when you're in these group boards, you're in a sea of many, which means that maybe you think you have more coverage, but you also maybe, if you're not part of the top tier in that group and you're not the top seller, then yours are not going to be shown as much, or like others, when they see yours next to the top seller, they may actually pick the top seller. And so what you're doing is actually more hurting yourself more by being in these group boards than the benefits that come from it. So it's really important that you hear that, because your products and your designs are actually going to be devalued in that setting. And I want you to be in a position where you are standing alone as an amazing brand and bringing people to your brand, not to someone else's, because you're also helping promote the other people, right? And this is one place where, even though I always preach abundance and there's more than enough for everybody, I don't think that we should be diluting our brand by doing the group board thing. All right, the next don't create sections. It may not even be a subject matter anymore, but if you're still able to, and you keep thinking that maybe sections are a good way to divide up your boards, this is not searchable. So the sections aren't searchable, and they're just really for personal use to divide up your pins to organize them better, but it's not part of the main search engine, and so therefore it defeats the purpose of you having even a pin on Pinterest, because it's no longer searchable. And so don't use sections. Okay, the next don't miss out on visibility. Do pins that are not just the products that you have from Pinterest, from Zazzle that you pin onto Pinterest. You also want to create things with images that are, unique and different. And you can do videos, and you can do reels, and you can do slideshows, which is kind of like you can basically do like a carousel that you create in Canva, and then you can make it look like a video on a video pin. And this is really important. And then even just some generic images and things that you have that you haven't even created anything specific. You can just put up a GIF, or you can put up like a stock photo that you can then just attract attention, and then you can lead them off into, obviously it has to be something that's relevant, but then you can then lead them into where you want them to go with the Zazzle product. Okay, next one is don't add personal boards to your business account. So if you have a personal brand, Pinterest account, and now you're starting a Zazzle business and you want to bring in that Zazzle business into your personal account because you already have so many followers and people that are coming to your boards and all that stuff, then the idea is still to not have those two accounts together. Instead, create a business account for each of your Zazzle stores so that you can monitor the stats and also begin to build your brand. So that's really important. Okay. Then there's still a couple more, 2 more. Okay, so the second last is don't have all your Zazzle stores in one Pinterest account. Again, this kind of goes back to the idea that we just talked about, where if you have multiple stores and they're all under one Pinterest account, even if it's a business account, then if those stores are not coalescing nicely and rather they're very different, then it's defeating the purpose of having the Pinterest account, because you're going to be bringing in so many stats of audience insights that you can gain from having specific accounts that are targeting a specific niche / store. So if your store is an all-encompassing store and you're the artist, then sure, then it's all under one umbrella. Maybe as long as your art or graphic design or brand is always in each of the stores, and then it's like not that we encourage that anymore, but a lot of people have, an artist name and then business, and then another store artist name wedding. And so if you're in that situation, then you can definitely put that all in one Pinterest account. But if you have you're still the owner and the artist of each thing, but it's very different. Like let's say you do goth type of stuff, and then you do politics, and then you do business, and then you do weddings. Those should all be in a different Pinterest account and you've already made those different stores on Zazzle, so they should just mirror what you've done on Zazzle. Okay, so the last don't limit the number of pins. Now, not repins of the same URL, but other, like the pins, you can pin as many times as you want. And we forget that. We think that we just should select a few pieces from what we've got on the Zazzle marketplace and pin them. But unless they're like the same thing 1,000 times, like if you have like a pattern, checkered pattern, and you made it on 1,000 products, you don't want to pin all of those 1,000 products to Pinterest. That would be spamming. But if you had something that was very viable in terms of maybe 100 products that were all on very good uses of that checkered pattern, then yes, why not? Go for it. Whenever you post, you pin. And then we actually, so in the Profit by Design Academy, which is your starter course that you should take as a way to not only start but also scale to the first 5K months that you can make on Zazzle, then you that's where we tell you to make 100 products and a month. And so those 100 products, if they're intentional and well thought through and strategic, those should definitely be pinned to Pinterest. And so and don't limit your pins. Okay, so that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching or listen, like if you're on YouTube or if you're in one of the podcast platforms and you're listening to this in your car or at night or whenever at home relaxing, then thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.